Howdy, yo, folks. Hello, and welcome to my graveyard. I'm your host of the evening, the Cemetery Man from Salem, Mass. Always taking aim to kicking candy ass, live and in living color, here with you only on Grande's Graveyard. Yes, ladies and gents, welcome back to another edition of John Grande Pre-Records the World. Yes, ladies and gents, I know it's random, it's rare, it's spooktacular, if you will, but, you know, I only usually do these when I feel passionate about something one way or the other, whether I love something or whether I absolutely unbridledly hate something. And this is actually the first of that. I kind of love this movie that we're going to be talking about here today. And it came out, I know, technically in festivals in 2023, but it just had its short theatrical release in major cities like Chicago, New York, LA, all that jazz. And it is the movie from 2023, Robert Morgan's directorial debut. This is Stopmotion, which is the movie I want to talk to you guys here about today. A stop-motion animator struggles to control her demons after the loss of her overbearing mother. Yes, it was directed by Robert Morgan, his first time in the director's chair, co-written by Robin King and Robert Morgan. Stars Aisling Franciosi, who you may remember from The Nightingale, the Jennifer Kent film, and also was in that lesser Last Voyage of the Demeter film as one of the leads. That movie's better left forgotten. Big disappointment there, but the movie I'm about to talk to you here today is far from a disappointment. I thought it was absolutely brilliant and a movie that really inspired me and reminded me, made me remind myself why I love the horror genre. You know, it's movies like this. And I'm not here to tell you it's a 10 out of 10. It's, you know, somewhere in the 8.5 range. But I do think that this was a brilliant movie and it is going to be a contender for best horror movie of the year for me. And I just loved every minute of this, to be perfectly honest. And I guess what we'll do is I'll do a spoiler portion at the end, you know, for anybody who is wanting to check it out, because it did play in the city by me, but it was only playing during the week, only on work nights and at like 11 p.m. showing. So if I had to take a train in, train out, I'm not getting home till 4 a.m. in the morning. So it just didn't make any sense to really go and see it in the theater, unfortunately, because I would not have regretted it had I had gone and seen it in the theater. But I rented it on VOD. You can rent it on Amazon Prime in ultra high definition UHD for $6.99. I highly recommend you do that. And if you're even more daring, you know, you could wait till it drops on Shudder for free if you have Shudder. I don't have Shudder, so I was like, I can't wait 2 months anyway. So I really wanted to rent this, and I was not disappointed. I was actually quite impressed by this movie, Stopmotion 2023. And you know, I'll get into spoilers at the end, but what we'll do is we'll do a spoiler-free section of this movie, and then we'll get into, you know, my thoughts, interpretations, all that gooey, gory goodness at the end when we get into what I think and how I interpreted this film. Now, first off, I have to thank Fever Dreamland Theater, Anthony, good brother Anthony. If you haven't checked out his channel, he's great, and he's been on our channel a bunch of times. Great people. There's a lot of great Twilight Zone content. And he's the one that reached out to me and said, hey, Grande, a few months ago, he said, hey, Grande, have you seen the trailer to Stopmotion? I said, no, and I checked out the trailer, and I was instantly hooked. I was like, looks engaging, this looks original, this looks like a very unique type of story. I'm all in. I really want to see this when it came out. And the first night it was on VOD, rented that son of a bitch, waited till it was late, waited till it was dark, waited till it was spooky feeling. And man, this movie did what any movie that is good, you know, can do, and that is to take you to another darker, deeper place, a dark side. It took me to a dark side place, and I thought in all the good ways. Now, I'll get into, you know, brief, you know, non-spoiler stuff that is in the trailer, so nothing dangerous coming here. But basically stars Aisling Franciosi as the character Ella, and she and her mother basically are working together to make a film. Her mother was a famous stop-motion animation filmmaker, and basically what has happened to her, she's gotten Parkinson's or some kind of disease where she cannot keep her hands steady, and that's key if you're trying to do stop-motion animation. So she asks her daughter, hey, before I bite the bullet, please, can you help me make this last film that I want to tell, this last story? I can't do it physically anymore. I can sit here and direct you in 2 millimeters to the left, 1 millimeter to the right, 0.5 millimeter to the left. You know, she's trying to direct her, and basically this mother, you could see, is a very dominating presence in Ella's life. And we see the unnatural relationship that these two have in the brief scenes that they do share with one another in the film. And then basically Ella's mother falls ill, and then Ella meets this little girl that lives down the hallway who's always sipping on this juice box. And after a while, it made the sound of sipping a juice box quite scary to me, as the two of them kind of come together. And at first it's small talk, and then it becomes, hey, why don't you make another film? Why don't you make this film that I have an idea for? And she tells her this whole idea of a film where this woman is hiding in the woods from this ash man, and he comes and knocks on the door 3 nights in a row. And basically what happens is life starts to imitate the art of the movie that she's making with this little girl, and her whole entire world starts to be turned upside down, and horror ensues from there. And that's basically the non-spoiler stuff that I can get into with you guys. So if you haven't seen it, that sounds interesting. If you want to pause me, put the trailer on, decide for yourself if you want to see this movie or not. I highly recommend it, but I will get into spoiler stuff here. So if you guys are looking to check it out, pause me right here, come back later. You're more than welcome, only on Grande's Graveyard. But I do want to dive into this because I thought this movie had a lot to say. And that's the type of horror movies I generally enjoy. You know, we look now, we have the Blumhouse movies that are almost strictly popcorn movies, whether it be Imaginary, whether it be Night Swim, movies that have come out this year that are generally popcorn movies. They're not trying to say all that much. They're fairly brainless films. And listen, if you like them, there's nothing wrong with a brainless popcorn movie. If you're trying to go, you know, have fun with your date and just enjoy yourself, maybe those movies will do the trick for your Fantasy Islands, your Truth or Dares of the world. On the other hand, they have the A24 movies, which some of them I like. Some of them I do think are overly pretentious, and I do think sometimes they don't quite work. But in between, you'll have the independent IFC film type of stuff, which is what this is, / a Shudder production that I just thought was the best of both worlds, and I thought really just knocked this whole idea out of the park because of what it had to say. There's so much interesting takes on the genre of horror in here that I wanted to cover in the spoiler review of this. And the first one being the horrors of being an artist. And here we see Aisling Franciosi playing the character of Ella, and she just, you could tell, has lost faith in herself. She's lost confidence in herself, and she's almost become dependent on her boyfriend, his sister, her friends, her own mother. She's become a very dependent person. She's dependent on others to help her, to think for her, to guide her in her life. She's lost faith in herself. And I think what she sees in this child, now, spoiler alert, she basically is the child. What she sees in this child is what she used to be when she wasn't dependent on others and when she had her own creative ideas that she could come up with on herself. You know, when she was this young, imaginative girl, when she was a dreamer, when she was an inspirer, when she was so much more, even though she was so much more young. And I like that dynamic that they play with here. What she sees in this girl is the innocence of what she was when she was a child, and how great she could have been if she didn't have this overbearing mother in her life. And that's another big part of the horror of this movie, is the dependence on others. She depends on her boyfriend. Hey, honey, you know, I'm with you. I'm here for you. I'm all these things. She depends on her mother to, you know, do these films. And then she also depends on this little girl to get the ideas for the film that she's currently doing. She can't come up with the ideas on her own. And I think there's quite a bit of horror in that. I think it's an interesting sequence where she does go to this party and she tries to take drugs. She's going to take drugs in order to try to be inspired. And she kind of walks around. She's kind of tripping out. At least she thinks she is. And we see all these interesting playing with colors from the director, Robert Morgan, whether it be these very bright greens and reds and purples and things like that. And I thought visually the movie looked quite interesting. And the stop motion animation that are used in the film within a film, I thought were incredible too. Just really creative ideas to use stop motion animation in the way that they did in this movie, in a very original and creative way. And then basically what happens is, you know, the third thing when it comes to the horrors of this movie is how far will you go to make your art work? And this is a theme that's been tackled before. I know that I'm saying it's a big original movie, and it is, but this is something that's been tackled in Color Me Blood Red. This has been covered in something like Tales from the Crypt, Eves Will Kill You. This has been covered in, even I would go as far as to say it's quite similar to May, when she's at the end trying to make the perfect person. And in this movie, she's trying to make the perfect stop motion animation film, you know, to please herself, to, you know, prove to herself that she can still be that dreamer, that daydreamer that we saw, you know, in her as a child. And it escalates. It goes from, hey, use this raw meat in your film as one of your characters. Use this wax that they use to make the bodies look good in a morgue. Use this roadkill that we found on the side of the road. And then till it's use your boyfriend, use his sister, use people, use blood, use guts, use whatever you have to do to make your film organic and gritty and raw, to the literal sense of the word raw. And I thought, what a great idea to watch this person slowly descend into not just madness, but I think into her youthful self, into herself that she so ever wanted to be for the rest of her life. And we watch Aisling as she just goes from, you know, happy-go-lucky trying to please everybody to just losing herself in order to create her perfect stop motion animation film. And she loses herself in her own creation. And I thought it was a brilliant movie. I really did. I thought that the writing was really good. The acting was fantastic. I thought Aislinn Fantasiosi, and I've seen her do good in other movies, but man, she just stole this thing here. I just loved her performance. She has to hit so many different highs and lows in this film and just nails them all around. I thought the film was quite creepy in sequences. Now, there's a couple of jump scares here and there. There are a couple of sequences that will make you feel unsettled, but the ending itself, I thought, was possibly the most effective thing from a horror standpoint in this movie. And again, spoilers here. We have, Aislinn's boyfriend and his sister, they confront her in her apartment, and they're like, hey, listen, you got to go. This is not healthy. She's literally putting herself in parts of this stop motion film. She's cutting parts of her body and putting it on top of the stop motion figures. And they're like, this is not healthy. We got to go. We got to get out of here. We got to save you. And they're trying to escort her out. One gets pushed down the steps. The other gets beaten to death with a tripod. One gets his nose held to death. And one gets stabbed with the tripod in their throat. And then she's putting parts of their bodies on these two stop motion figures, the Ash Man and the girl in the woods. And basically what happens is they both come to life, it looks like, in front of our eyes, and the Ash Man turns his attention from the figure in the film to Aislinn, who's put herself as a part of the film, kind of a commentary there. And we see this incredible visual of him grabbing her face off, and it's like this kind of wax and eating her face. And then we, out of nowhere, are in this, like, what it felt to me like a Twin Peaks Red Lodge type of setting, where it's this red cabin in the middle of the woods that we've been hearing about the whole movie from the story from the little girl. She kind of enters in. There's a great wide shot of her entering in this bright red, blood red walls. And she kind of looks, and the little girl, come on, come over. You want to see the finished product? And we see the finished product that she has done. And I loved the use of silence here between these two characters. Come take a look. And they just watch silently, look at each other. And then Aislinn starts to part ways, goes into this box, opens it, starts to slowly close it. And then we finally do get our last line of the film where she says, I loved it. Like, I loved the film. And then Aislinn closes the box, and, we fade to black. It did a really good usage of silence in a horror movie. And man, I just thought, wow, like, what a great freaking movie that I really wanted to get on here and recommend to people and just say that I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'd give it my stamp of approval. My quote on the DVD, like, bloody disgusting, always, this is the greatest DVD horror movie I've seen in a year. The BS bloody disgusting people. But I really do. I would say this is the best horror movie I've seen in quite some time, and I highly recommend it for you guys that, maybe are hesitant on it, or, are interested in seeing a newer horror movie that's not a Blumhouse, it's not an A24, it's not a remake, the reboot, a requel, if you will, whatever the hell you want to call it, a bad Scream sequel. This is anything but that. This is something that I thoroughly enjoyed from start to finish. I thought the acting was tremendous. I thought the story that it was trying to tell, while relatable, in some ways, was also quite horrific in the ways I couldn't relate to it. And I thought that this is a movie that anyone and everyone should see, especially if you're an artist, depending on no matter what art you do, no matter what, you're into. I think any artist can kind of see the horrors that be in their own art and how far they'd be willing to go in order to make it work. And this is that type of movie that I thought did that. And man, I was impressed. I was quite impressed by this. I will totally be seeing whatever this director does next. I hope he continues to make films, because I thought he just did a great job with this. I thought he brought a nice, unique visual flair to it. And I thought, most importantly, was a great storytelling aspect. I really liked the way this movie's story was told. I thought, in a very similar way, this is how I tried to tell when I did my short movie Down by the Bay. Now, I didn't even come half as close to what he captures here, but again, this is like a type of movie where it gives you something to shoot for. This is the type of horror that I'm into, the type of storytelling that I find interesting. And I do think there's a lot of ways to interpret this. I don't think there's just the way that I said, where this woman is finally at peace with her art. She's put herself into it, her friends into it, her family into it, raw meat, roadkill, all of the above into it. And she is finally satisfied with the result product, and thus closes the box on her own life. She loses her entire life just to make this movie work. Well, it makes you beg the question, would you trade your life if you could get your art over? such an interesting question because, obviously, logically, you say no, but ask somebody who's really gone through starving artists. Ask somebody who's really been there in the desperation field. I don't know. Maybe they would trade their life for it. And I think there's a lot of horror in that question. So when you look in the mirror, when you reflect that in and of yourself or on others, I think there could be so much unsettling thoughts that go into that. And this movie really delivered for me. So for stop motion, I would come in at an 8.5 out of 10 in this one. I really enjoyed it. If I had any knocks, I would say maybe a pacing issue here and there. It's not a long film. It's an hour, 33 minutes. Not a terribly long film, but I would say it's a little bit like May at the end. I don't know if they should have gone with the gratuity of the boyfriend and his sister being put into this film. Like, I thought she just could have started cutting into her own flesh and putting her stuff on. I think that would have worked a little bit better for the story they were telling. I felt like maybe the brother and sister was a little bit gratuitous to get them in there because they really weren't a part of this, although she was dependent on them. So I guess that does fit for the vision of the director, I suppose. But that would be my one gripe. That and maybe a pacing issue here or there. But otherwise, I thought this was a tremendous horror film that everyone should go out and see. And I would say this is the best one I've seen since The Lodge. And that's been quite some time. The Lodge was in 2019, saw it early 2020. This is early 2024. So this is a good 4 years since I could say that there was a movie as good on this level. And I dare say this might have been better. But that is Stop Motion from 2023. Of course, it is on VOD streaming now. I saw it on Amazon Prime. I don't know if it's in any other platforms. It will be on Shudder, like I'm saying, in, I think, late May, it'll be on Shudder. So if you want to watch it for free, you're going to have to wait a few months. If you want to just drop the $7, I do not think you'll be mistaken, my friends. If you did see the movie, comment down below. Let me know. I know there were a lot of people that were disappointed with it. A lot of people thought it could have been great. It had potential to be great, but was not. If you feel that way, tell me why. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why you think it was a wasted potential movie. If you thought it sucked, tell me why. If you loved it like me, tell me why. Please let me know down below. I'll post this. And coming up soon, I'll be making our March Madness bracket for the March 21st, 2024 show of Grande's Graveyard, where we have 32 films and we just have to create the bracket. I'll post that on the community tab where you can fill out your own bracket, and we will catch you next time only on the Graveyard. Too sweet peace, and we'll catch you next time, everybody.